I remember sitting on what was an amazing piece of technology at the time, an iPad, in 8th grade and looking at metro systems around the world. It was the first time I really went onto the internet and just looked at metro systems in various countries and transit systems in general. And I was sort of amazed seeing countries like Italy and Brazil that actually had a surprising number of rail systems. But the country that clearly stood out from the rest was China, who not only had massive metro systems in Shanghai and Beijing, but had also opened new entire metro systems just in the 2000s in Shenzhen, Chengdu, Xi'an, Nanjing, Foshan, Dalian, Shenyang, Changchun, and Chongqing. Perhaps the most amazing case is the Chengdu Metro, which first opened in 2010 and now has 373 stations. It's bigger than the London Underground, and it's almost as big as the New York subway, and it opened like 10 years ago. My university roommate, when I was back in university, was from Chengdu, and he told me how when he left Chengdu there was 1 or 2 metro lines, and when he came back there was going to be 7 to 9 metro lines. Just mind-blowing. Now, of course, this was happening in parallel with China's sort of rise to the international stage, and while I was impressed by seeing metros popping up left and right, I was amazed when I looked at India and saw that the country didn't have nearly as many metro systems. India was also pretty famously growing at an incredible rate at the time, and seeing that there was only really metro systems in Delhi and Kolkata was sort of surprising. Well, a few months ago I think I was spending some time looking at metro systems, various websites, and well, I have some nice news to report about India. Let's get into it. Now, as I mentioned, when I was looking at metro systems back in 2011, India really only had its 2 original systems in Delhi and Kolkata. Now, both of those systems have grown, but Delhi's in particular has been pretty incredible, with over 100 kilometers of new metro built in just the last 10 years. To put that into perspective, Toronto has built like 7 kilometers of new metro. And before you say it, yes, Canada is a smaller country, but Toronto is still a big city and we should be building way more metro akin to what Delhi is doing. Now, with that out of the way, what was amazing was when I went a few months ago to look at these systems in India, India suddenly had 11 more metro systems than it had just 10 years ago. 11. Now I'm going to break them down here, talk about the future, and just generally how cool it is to see a wave out of the way are the Noida Metro and the Rapid Metro Gurgaon. Calling these systems new systems is maybe a bit generous because they're both kind of suburban systems extending from Delhi. Basically, suburban municipalities decided to build their own metro systems. Gurgaon's is really an interesting story, but I'll leave that to another day. Basically, calling these truly separate systems would be akin to saying a new subway system opens in Mississauga next to Toronto, and that constitutes a new subway system. It's really all just one big system. That being said, I'm not necessarily sure where to draw the line. If you look again at China, Shanghai and Suzhou both have metro systems that are both actually quite big, and they're considered separate. I believe they're interlinked, and I guess the question I would raise is, what constitutes a separate system? Is it about the fare system? Is it about whether they're connected? Is it about whether it's one contiguous urban area? Leave your comments down below. Anyways, the Rapid Metro Gurgaon and the Noida Metro both have or either plan to have fare medium integration, the same metro card as the Delhi Metro, which does bring them under one umbrella in my eyes. That said, part of me feels like these should just be really fully rolled into the Delhi Metro, since they even use the same color, which cannot be ideal for wayfinding given that Delhi generally describes its lines in terms of color. In the case of the Rapid Metro in Gurgaon, the system uses 750 volt DC third rail and trains from CRRC, which generally feels like a bit of a downgrade from general Delhi Metro standards. On the other hand, the Noida Metro uses 25 kV AC overhead power and again CRRC rolling stock, a bit more in line with Delhi Metro standards. Now, the Rapid Metro in Gurgaon does probably earn its name since it has only 11 stations over 17 kilometers of length. It connects to Delhi's Yellow Line. It's also referred to as LRT, which means truly no one is immune from that term. The Noida Metro, on the other hand, has 21 stations over 30 kilometers of track, so still a pretty wide station spacing, and connects to Delhi Metro's Blue Line. It's really kind of reminding me of some of those suburban lines in Beijing or Mexico City, where you have a line that kind of goes out into the suburbs that's just its own metro line. Now, as it turns out, Delhi Metro kind of has its hands in both systems. It's the contract operator and maintainer of the Noida Metro, and a generally interesting fact, both of these systems are fully elevated, which makes sense, I suppose, since they are in the suburbs. Now, this video really isn't about Delhi Metro, though clearly Delhi Metro wants it to be. I'm thinking of restarting my Demystified series with a video on the Delhi RRTS, which I think is a super interesting system, akin to maybe Seoul's GTX, but elevated. And anyways, if you'd like to see that, comment down below. I know I've said to comment on another thing, but seriously, it's just the best way to communicate with people since things get crazy sometimes. It's really been a while since I've made a Demystified video, so I think it's probably about time to bring it back. Now, we're going to leave the Delhi area and look at metro systems across the rest of India. Again, remembering that just 10 years ago, the country had only 2 metro systems. Now, I'm going to divide these systems into 2 categories. One will be 750 volt DC third rail systems, the other will be the 25 kV AC overhead wire powered systems. For the third rail systems, we have 3. The Namma Metro, the Kochi Metro, and the Ahmedabad system. Namma is a 2-line system with 51 stations over 56 kilometers of track and Hyundai Rotem rolling stock. This system opened in October of 2011, probably a little bit after I started doing my wide-ranging research. Kochi is a single-line system with 22 stations over 26 kilometers of track and Alstom Metropolis Metro rolling stock. I want to point out too that Kochi probably has my favorite metro logo of any of the systems in India. Besides Delhi, I think it's a toss-up for me. I think that the metro logo is incredibly important because it becomes a symbol of the city, and so it's good to see that there has been thought put into it. This system opened just in 2017. Finally, there's Ahmedabad, which has maybe the smallest metro system operational that I've seen, especially considering that the trains and the size of everything is still large. It's only got 6 stations on 6 kilometers of track. Though it does have high quality trains supplied by Hyundai Rotem, who you'll notice supply a lot of systems in India, and it opened just 2 years ago. As it turns out, all of these systems are expanding. Namma is building 3 new metro lines, and Kochi and Ahmedabad are both building 2 new metro lines. So tons of new metro lines built with third rail to go around. Now it's time for the much more numerous 25 kV AC overhead line powered systems. Now 25 kV AC is a standard mainly seen on mainline long distance railways, though systems like the Elizabeth line in London also use this standard. The reason alternating current is so attractive is because you require less substations because the power carries for longer distances. That's why long distance transmission lines use AC power. Now, because Delhi Metro both consulted on and influenced a lot of metro systems in India, you see 25 kV AC overhead power on a lot of the systems. And again, that's simply because Delhi Metro basically pioneered doing that. Jaipur is a 1-line system with rolling stock that's uniquely built and designed in India. The system has 11 stations over 12 kilometers of track and opened in 2015, though a second line is set to open this year. The Lucknow Metro features 1 line with 21 stations over 23 kilometers of track. And very familiar looking trains from Alstom. Where have I seen these trains before? The system opened in 2017. The Hyderabad Metro features 3 lines and 57 stations, and in my opinion feels like kind of the most cohesive system in the country outside of Delhi. I'm also kind of a big fan of the map. A lot of the maps of the systems I've seen in India aren't my favorite, but the one in Hyderabad is really nice. And yeah, this comprehensive metro system, it opened in 2017, 4 years ago. And as you might expect, its rolling stock was provided by Hyundai Rotem. The Nagpur Metro features 24 stations on 26 kilometers of track with rolling stock provided by CRRC, who isn't that common in the Indian market. The system just opened in 2019, 2 years ago. 2019 was a bit of a crazy year. India opened 3 metro systems. There's also Chennai, who has 42 stations over 54 kilometers of track on 2 lines in its network. The trains are also supplied by Alstom on this system, and you'll notice that Alstom, like Hyundai Rotem, has broken into the market in a bunch of different cities in India, though I don't believe any of their trains are in use in Delhi, which is a bit surprising given how extensively they've entered the market. They're also really big in the mainline freight market in India. It's another topic for a future video. It's an interesting network as well. I actually think it would be really cool if Delhi Metro did a fully automated line with the Alstom Metropolis akin to the REM or what Sydney Metro's done. Probably more on the Sydney Metro side, given that Delhi needs the capacity. But yeah, Delhi would be a great place to originate automated metro in India. I don't believe India currently has an automated metro line. So that's an interesting opportunity. And of course, last but not least is Mumbai, whose system struggled a lot and didn't open until 2014. Now Mumbai still only has one line, but that's going to change really quickly. While the current single line only has 12 stations on its 11-kilometer route, which is more stations per route length than most systems in India, there is a ton of metro being built in Mumbai right now, more than already exists in many large cities. There are currently 6 lines under construction with over 200 kilometers of track. Now I also want to mention that the trains in Mumbai, which are manufactured by CRRC, are quite iconic. They have this sort of swept back face that just looks somewhat unusual for a metro system. Now, it's also clearly the plan for the Mumbai Metro to become something of the scale of the Delhi Metro. So it seems like India is sort of set to be like China, with 2 main metros, in China's case Shanghai and Beijing, in the country, with Delhi and Mumbai. I think that's good to have 2 good metro systems. I would argue Canada does as well with Toronto and Montreal, because you sort of can have this dynamic of the systems competing and pushing each other forward. Now I think when the Mumbai Metro starts to really open up and all of the lines are opening, it's going to really transform mobility in that city. Mumbai, if you're familiar at all, has a really complicated geography. There's a peninsula and the like, and there's very crowded suburban trains which maybe can be upgraded once some of the traffic is taken off by the metro and the like. But suffice to say, the city is going to benefit massively from metro rail, and that's part of what's so exciting about seeing these systems. They're going to be really intensely used, and that's just awesome. Now, why did I divide the systems into 2 categories? Well, a lot of people want me to make the pantograph versus third rail video, and so I'm going to do it very soon. What's better, pantograph or third rail? I'm going to give you my honest opinion. Now, as you can probably see, India is pumping out metros at an astonishing rate. In just the past 4 years, 6 new systems opened. And not only are all of the existing systems expanding quite rapidly, but there's a bunch of other systems under construction that will add metro to whole new. The whole area around Delhi is going to have a bunch of metros, hopefully all connected up with that rapid regional transit system. Now, I do want to make some general comments before closing out the video. The first thing that's worth noting is that while you might notice doing some research about different metro systems in India that a lot of systems are operating 4 or 3-car trains, this is just sort of an efficiency measure. The systems are built for expandability, and that's fantastic to see. In generally, you can see trains that will go up to 6 cars or even further, up to 8 cars potentially, which will mean lots of additional capacity for the future. Also, perhaps surprisingly, but probably not if you follow the industry, basically all of the metro lines being built in India offer CBTC or computer-based signaling systems that allow for super high frequencies. Now, if you live in a city like New York or London or Toronto, you've seen how painful it is to get CBTC or ATC installed on an existing subway line using older technology, but this technology is just being installed on Indian metro systems from day one, which means that they can operate up to very impressive high frequencies, like 90 seconds. That means that a lot of systems that are starting with, say, a 3-car train and a pretty low headway can easily quadruple their capacity by both extending trains and more than doubling frequency. And generally, a trend you'll see across all of these systems is they're incredibly modern. They're fully air-conditioned, many of them have platform screen doors, they tend to have connections to transit-oriented development, often through skywalks, because these systems are heavily elevated. The massive booming metro market has also meant that a ton of reputable international companies have come into India. So you have Alstom, Siemens, Bombardier, rest in peace, Nippon Sharyo, Nippon Signaling, CRRC, Hyundai Rotem, all of these big companies are operating in India. Thales as well for signaling. It's really impressive. And better yet, an entire local domestic metro construction industry has been spun up. As you can see with Jaipur, the trains are of Indian origin, but also as you can see with Alstom, whose factory in India is now producing trains for the rest of the world. Montreal and Sydney's trains both came from the same factory that's producing trains for Indian metro systems, which goes to show you the incredible quality that's been achieved in pretty short order. Now, if you're wondering how this happened, a few key things. First of all, Delhi Metro has been pretty critical. It's interesting to sort of analyze Delhi Metro's impact on the rest of the country, but basically Delhi Metro has become the national expert consultant on metro systems. And that's caused conflict in some cases, but nonetheless, it's probably helped massively in building out new systems, because you have this really experienced builder and operator of metros who can go and say, no, you shouldn't build it like this, you should build it like this. As I mentioned though, that's not necessarily always a good thing, since that 25 kV AC standard for metro metro systems, some have debated whether that's actually good because, for example, in tunnels, it requires more clearance, which could make things more expensive. That said, beyond that, there's a lot of measures to reduce cost, which is good to see. In some cases, that's include private sponsorship of metro stations, and generally, broadly across India, you'll see that looks like elevated metro systems, which are not only faster to build and often less disruptive, but are also obviously much less expensive. And hey, I'm happy to see Vancouver SkyTrain style systems across the world. One of the other helpful things you'll see that India has done, and you'll notice this if you look through kind of official documents, is they phase construction. So cities tend to have phases where we're going to build this line and this extension in this phase, and we're going to do all of this as a big package. And that sort of means that not only is the guesswork taken out of planning, you're not saying LRT or subway, and you're not saying this line or this line. It's just a list of lines, and it's clear when the money comes in, we're going to build this stuff. And that means that as money has poured in, because India is spending a lot on metro systems, systems have just gone and said, hey, let's build the next thing on the list and keep expanding. So there you have it, the country in the world that's building the most metro, and I'm incredibly excited to see it. It's awesome to see that in the 21st century, we're not necessarily as obsessed with building cities around roads and around highways, and we're starting to make metros a really fundamental part of massive urban expansion. It's also incredibly positive to see this in India, a country that's growing rapidly and that's probably going to be the world's most populated country in the not so distant future. This country has massive economic potential, and that's going to happen on the back of metro systems. It's not going to be the same as the 1960s and 70s where growth was driven by cars and highways. It's going to be on the back of green technology with metro systems, often largely powered by renewable energy. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Which is a little surprising, which is a bit surprising given how, which is a bit surprising,